ABSA Bank, one of South Africa's big four banks, announced their sponsorship of the Rugby World Cup champions and South Africa's national team, the Springboks. The sponsorship comes at a crucial time as it's World Cup year when the Boks defend their title. ABSA Group Executive Maria Ramos says the sponsorship made perfect sense for the banking giant.
When the Springboks became available as a property, effectively as a marketing property, it just felt like the right the right addition to what we were already doing with rugby. We also wanted to consolidate our sports sponsorship, so we involved with soccer, and we involved with rugby, and being involved with the Springboks was just the sort of the crowning of the sponsorships that we were involved in on the rugby side. So it was a consolidation of it, and the Springboks was just the crowning glory of that sponsorship on the rugby side.
ABSA is no stranger in rugby circles. They've been involved in rugby in some shape or form for over 25 years.
The ABSA company as it is, and as we know it historically in its various forms, has supported rugby for a quarter of a century. And the natural consequence of that is that it has obviously, as a company, had to look at its own principles. We've had to look at our own principles and align that not just with what rugby requires and what the corporate world requires, but also what our country's dynamics are. We have to align that with it as well, and it's important that we do that, and I think that's where the commonality lies.
For the players themselves, the responsibility of carrying the aspirations of a corporate brand and that of a nation is something well understood.
I'm not a marketing man, but I certainly do understand the pros and cons of getting involved with brands and association. And an association works one of two ways. It's either really good for you or it's really bad for you. And when you give one of this magnitude, the association between ABSA and the Springboks, I think in this concern, we know that both teams are going to benefit from this association, because both brands are already successful but need to go to another level and be even more successful.
As the headline sponsor of the South African national rugby team, ABSA is hoping for great exposure both locally and internationally.
We obviously have decided that sponsorships are a good way to communicate our message, to communicate our brand, to communicate the ABSA brand across a wide spectrum of markets, of clients, of customers, and that it's good value for money when we think about it in that way. It's a good way of also communicating our commitment to nation building, to investment in the future. Because we're looking at the Springboks.
In the final analysis, a fusion of the two brands will need to resonate with the consumers. Saru is confident that theirs is a perfect match.
The name ABSA, it's a four-lettered word. It's got SA in it. It's synonymous with, with this country in so many ways. And rugby is also synonymous with South Africa. We are the world champions. When you talk to people internationally, and you talk to them about rugby, they do invariably actually talk about South Africa.
For us as a team, in a really big year, to have a group as big as ABSA back us and give us that boost quite timely, so is a fantastic positive to start the year off.
Well, a big congratulations to ABSA for scooping up the sponsorship of the Springboks. But of course, as we saw, Happy, ABSA has been involved with rugby for quite a number of years. So this must be the cherry on the cake, and your timing is perfect for the World Cup.
Yeah, look, I think the timing was perfect, as you said. But I guess it's one of those long time coming type of sponsorships. We've been involved with the ABSA Currie Cup for 25 years, as everyone has mentioned. And when this became available, we didn't think twice about it, and in fact, when we got to the boardroom, we started negotiating with SA Rugby. It became quite evident that we were almost like natural partners. The negotiations would have been tough to a degree, but you could see that the two partners were ready to court each other and take this relationship to the next level. So yeah, it made
Just
sense.
because you already had the relationship with rugby?
I guess
was
so,
that
yeah.
just the natural step?
I guess it's because we had the relationships that we already had, and we'd been involved with rugby. So it wasn't as though he has a potential suitor who wants to get into the game and they don't really know what the game's about.
Right.
So we've already had the relationships with the players. We had the relationship with the unions themselves. So and it's not just one union. We've had relationships with many unions. So it was a natural leap.
But Sandile, in a sports-mad country, as we say, you've got three big properties, soccer, rugby, and of course cricket. How do you think a brand should go along with aligning a brand to a specific sport?
Well, I think ultimately it depends on the objectives, and that's why in designing any sports sponsorship or sport marketing campaign, what's critical is identifying what the objectives are. I mean, from an ABSA perspective, not only are they involved with the Springbok team, which is the national rugby team, but they're involved as well with Bafana Bafana. So from a brand perspective, that says something about ABSA in terms of where they want to be seen from a marketing perspective as a brand. So, I mean, we have a saying: if you are gonna get involved in sports sponsorship, first and foremost, you got to think about the consumer. If you look at sports sponsorship, it's about tapping into an environment that consumers are passionate about. I suppose it's the difference between engagement marketing versus interruption marketing. I mean, I always say to people, consumers look forward to watching sport either on TV or at a stadium, and they seldom look forward to watching TV ads.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It goes beyond that, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But David, here's a question. So if we're talking about how to decide which brand, which sport to align it to, how much of that is personal choice from maybe the guys upstairs in the executive team? You know?
I'd like to think, and certainly we've had to in economic recessions and what have you, but I'd like to think we've come a long way from the old chairman's folly and we take it because we like a sport. It still happens, but sponsorship is a marketing technique which is increasingly sophisticated because it can touch people in ways other marketing disciplines simply cannot. Every year BMI comes out with what we call the annual Bible on sport, the annual sport track. And it tracks every single sport in terms of its demographics. So just like every brand has a DNA, so does every sport.
Right.
And basically, when it comes to the sponsor's objectives, it's about matching. It's the strategic fit between who do I want to talk to? Is it LSM 7 to 10? Is it white males? Is it black females? And every code can have a match with the specific
Well, let's
objective.
ask Happy from ABSA, what were your objectives?
Yeah, the idea is to make sure that you mirror the sport that you choose with the kind of consumer that you have. And in our case, if you look at our premier sponsorships, so to speak, we have a premier soccer league in ABSA Premiership. We have a premier rugby league in form of the ABSA Currie Cup. Then we have the national team in Bafana Bafana, the national team in the Springboks. And you look at the kind of consumer profile that we have, and it fits in perfectly with the kind of people who follow those sports properties. And I believe firmly in the maxim that came up with Phil Nutt when he said that fans abandon themselves to the heroes of their game, and it's true. And when you've chosen the right kind of sport or game to mirror what your consumer loves, then the fit is there.
It's a good marriage.
And it's a good marriage. And then sponsorships are no longer about just punting your brand. You've got to use the sponsorship in activations of many nature in order to use the sponsorship to sell for you. And that is a very important thing. So we didn't just say, now we're going to go promote the ABSA brand. The ABSA brand is very well known, 12 years young, but it's very well known. But use the properties that you've taken to go and sell product for you. And these sponsorships are certainly going to do that for them.
But Sandile, don't you see this happening, that corporates just throw money at sponsorships without leveraging it properly, like Happy was just saying?
Yeah, I think Happy is absolutely right. Leveraging is key. If you're going to throw money towards a property, sports, sponsorship, without leveraging it, you're actually just wasting money. I mean, people think that sponsorship is just about what you see on TV on the day, as in the match. It goes way beyond that. It's how you leverage it, whether it's part of an entire campaign, a sponsorship campaign. So really, the event itself on the day is a culmination of a sequence of events that have happened or platforms that you have created to leverage a sponsorship. Sponsorship is about addressing the needs of the brand and the needs of the business. If it cannot generate money, I mean, Dave will tell you, when we do research and we're looking at ROIs, it's all about addressing those two things.
Because you're the business at the end of the day. Yes, Dave.
If I can jump in on the leveraging, just to throw numbers out, and it's a business channel, so we might as well do that.
Yeah.
Sponsorship on average 85 cents if we go back 5 years ago, 2006. 85 cents was spent on average on leveraging for every R1 spent on buying direct markets. Fast forward 4 years, now we've had some very expensive toys out there with the World Cup. We've had what we call 2010 tax and the big 3 codes that have caught up over the preceding 2 years, 29, 2010. And we're now at a situation where we've lost 25% off the top of our leverage budgets in this country. We're sitting at roughly 60 cents to leverage.
Yeah.
And sponsorship inherently doesn't work all that well unless you've bought the rights correctly and embedded.
But it works for you if you take something as big as the Springboks.
Correct.
Because they are already a household name.
Right.
So you don't have to work too hard to punt it.
Yeah.
100%. And Happy's quite lucky in the sense that he's already got tremendous brand association already built up over
With
years
rugby.
of association with rugby.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to spend one-to-one on a sponsorship like that. But there are a lot of expensive toys out there, I'm sure you'd agree, without any batteries to run them.
Right, right. But just getting back to the point of leveraging, as part of your package deal and your sponsorship deal, taking away the obvious, you know, the branding and the exposure, what are the other benefits to you as a sponsor? What sweetens that deal?
The idea that you can get the players to come to a shopping mall and you invite your customers to come and interact with them. I go back to that bit that I mentioned about fans abandoning themselves to the heroes of their game. You say that the Springboks of Bafana Bafana will be available at Mall X this particular weekend, they will come in droves. So that is the part where you're using sponsorships to sell for you. In fact, that's when you find sponsorships selling better than an ad, a 30-second ad on television. That would have cost you a lot of money. And you look at what you spend in 1 year on a sponsorship of something as huge as Bafana Bafana or the Springboks. And then you look at how much you would spend on a cost per thousand on a 30-second television ad. And then you realize that the sponsorships actually work because you can activate them. And you can't activate an ad on TV.
To touch on Happy's point, I mean, sponsorship is a science. Okay, there's a formula that is utilized. I mean, Dave is probably familiar with this as well. But when you design sponsorship strategies, you know, it's a case of sitting down, identifying your objectives, the strategy that you're going to put in place to meet the objectives, and to what Happy's talking about, tactically what you're going to do, and then measure it.
Right.
That's basically the formula. I mean, there's all sorts of the models that are used, but ultimately, it's about having clear objectives, a strategy, and be clever.
And be meeting those objectives.
Yeah.
But now, rumor has it that the sponsorship investment this time around is considerably higher than the previous sponsorship. So how do you quantify a brand like the Springboks and how much that sponsorship is worth? David?
Well, we track every sponsorship in the country, so there's a number of ways you can do it. There's the tangibles, which are how much media is it going to generate, logos on screen, as if I had bought classic advertising, what is the media return? But I think most brands, and certainly the top sponsors in this country, have moved beyond just calculating how many media seconds I get in return, how high is my awareness. It's how do I now take that association and engage with an audience in a way that they find meaningful, in a way that's something that they're passionate about, that makes them not just short-term sale, but clients for life. And these can all be measured. We not only measure every media return and every awareness point that a sponsorship has, we measure the qualitative issues. Are they more loyal to a brand as a result of it? We can test between current clients versus non-clients to see if they're moved higher than they would have been historically as a result of that sponsorship. Now, if you look at acquiring for an ABSA 4% of one of the other bank's brands in commercial revenues, and you can see qualitatively that that's happening as a result of the rugby, the questions by the accountants on how much did we pay versus how many seconds did we get on screen start to go away very quickly.
So as you said, quite a science.